Hello everybody, this video is on Rook Endgames and a specific tip on how to win an endgame like you see on the board here. Now you may have had these positions before, you might have been on both sides, and you might think it's very easy to win with a rook against a pawn, but in this kind of position when your king is far away and the enemy king is nearby to help out the pawn and advance it, it is surprisingly difficult to win. So it's white to move here. Let's have a look at a few options white has. One move is check, and then your rook is in front of the pawn, and you can then try and run with your king up to help out. But black here is able to what's called shoulder the white king away, is not allowing the white king to get any nearer, and simultaneously is coming up to help out the black pawn. So here maybe black would advance the pawn here, and now the rook has to stay on the first rank. And here we have a drawn position. White will have to give up his rook for the pawn. And yeah, this would be agreed to draw here. So that option of rook b1 check was not so good. How about the idea of going behind the pawn, which is sometimes seen in endgames where you put your rook, you go around the back, and it's harder to defend the pawns that way. So Rook H7 as an option, and supposing you do put the rook behind the pawn, now you could run your king up. But here, the white king is far enough away that black doesn't really need to worry too much, and should be able to arrange it so that white has to swap his rook for the promoted pawn, or the pawn that's about to promote. So here, white would have no choice but to play either rook to say g7 or f7, and then skewer the newly promoted pawn and queen, newly promoted queen and the king, and swap off, or just play rook back to a7 and then king back to b2, and we'll have repetition. So moving the rook here isn't so good. What about if we leave it where it is and play king g7, so running up with the king immediately. King b5, king f6, and here black probably can draw. It's a little bit harder, but here black can shoulder the white king again, stopping it getting any nearer and staying near enough to the pawn to avoid any unpleasantness. So as white's king can't get any closer, let's put the rook back behind the pawn, where it's better than being in front of the pawn. But again, white isn't fast enough with his king to stop the pawn promoting, and we get the same position as last time, pretty much. So now here's the key to winning. This is the only move I can think of. Maybe a table base, if you had a eidetic memory, you might be able to remember other moves that would win, but I think this is the only move that wins very, very easily. It's known as the 5th rank cutoff, so would that give you a hint as to where to move to? Well, on the 5th rank, Rook H5. So here, what we're doing is we're stopping black's king marching up the board. And black has two choices. Either he can simply oscillate between a6 and b6, and white can then bring his king to, say, c3, play king to f6, play rook f5, and then not interfere with the line of the rook and play king g5, king f4, and run all the way around to a4 and capture the pawn. So black's other choice is to play a4 and try and win this, or at least draw. King b2, And again, if black just moves the king around, white will do the same plan I've just laid out. So a3 is black's only chance. And now, can you see how white wins here? Yeah, the king is far enough away that it can't protect the pawn. So you can attack it with rook h3, and the pawn needs to move. And here you can just win with rook to a3 and snap off the pawn, and then it should be fairly easy to win with rook and king against king. So I hope that tip might help you win games in the future. The 5th rank cutoff can be very useful. It works with if you're black, it will be on the 4th rank technically that you would cut off the enemy king on, say, a4, b4, c4. But yeah, it's called the 5th rank cutoff because it's from white's perspective. Anyway, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.